Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald. We've got a really interesting guest here today, Marva Bailer. Now, one of the big reasons why Marva is on here is because Marva, at one point in your career, you had $1 billion quota, right? So there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. That's the topic today. What are the top 5 lessons from having a $1 billion quota? But I want to turn over to you to explain your background a little bit. But beyond having that $1 billion quota when you were at IBM and you've been at enterprise level, big enterprise tech companies, you are an author. You should tell us about your book. You've been on the news. You talk about the future of business, AI, all kinds of different things. So we're very privileged to have you on today. But maybe before we get into the lessons learned from having $1 billion quota, maybe tell us a little bit more about your background.
Thanks, Steve, for having me. And I didn't enter the business world with a $1 billion quota. I worked for an amazing startup that was going through Y2K, and we were acquired by IBM actually right before Christmas. And like many people that get acquired, it's very exciting for the investors and for the C-suite. But for the general management and then the workers, there was a lot of uncertainty, and I ended up staying. I was the only executive that stayed for over a year, and I ended up being there for 10 years. So I will share with you a lot of interesting ideas about what I learned with the multiple jobs I had. Every 2 years, I had a new assignment. And one of them was to help other companies. They had acquired a whole portfolio of 22 other software companies. So I got to meet all the cultures and people from there and learn from their experiences. So I'm really excited today to talk to you about that. And then my last $1 billion company was Amazon. So I worked in the Amazon Web Services division, and that was also very exciting and a lot to learn from their leadership principles. So I'm really looking forward to discussing all this today.
Well, good. I'm sure we could do a whole nother podcast on how to handle $1 billion worth of stress, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. You've got 5 different lessons that you want to talk about and learn from. But tell me just overall, you were at startups, you went into these big companies, IBM, Amazon. Tell us what is just kind of the lay of the land in terms of the different mindset that you just have to have when you're transitioning from one to the other in a way that, because we're not all working at companies that have $1 billion quotas, right? But kind of the mindset that you had to adopt that you think would be good for us to understand and know here.
So it's interesting you say the stress. I'm kind of thinking towards my startup careers, and the stress is actually greater because if you don't make that quarter, you literally could be out of business. And at the bigger companies, they say this is the most important quarter, our stockholders, our shareholders, our stock, but you're not literally going to be shut down. So the smaller companies, you literally see it. In the bigger companies, the ones that I worked at, they were very strong with what they called cadence. And cadence is when you actually have an organized way to manage your business so it's predictable. I found in some of the startups I worked for, that type of discipline really actually does not exist. So that would be, I would say, one of the main differentiators between the larger companies and some of the smaller companies I've worked for.
That's good because with a cadence, that's come from years and years of trial and error in what works and what doesn't work. And it can kind of be the wild, wild west in a startup, right? So I'm eager. Let's get into your top 5 here. I think we actually just learned one, so we'll call it top 6. But if you could just take us through maybe the first lesson learned that you'd want us to know.
So the first one is scale. When you work for a smaller company, and when I say smaller, it could be a $50 billion company or a $100 billion company, or it could be a $100 million company. So when you work at these other companies, you always think the biggest sale or the biggest contract value you're going to have, there's a ceiling, there's a vision you have. And you think we'll never be able to have that total lifetime value of the customer. It's never going to be X. That's what was so different of going when we had our company going to IBM. I can give you a specific example. We're working with one of the largest telcos in North America. We worked with a lot of telcos at the company that I work with that got acquired, but it was one of the largest. We had a very great relationship with them, but what we didn't know is what type of relationship they had with IBM. And they also had an equal relationship with one of the big 3 consulting firms. So 20% of their business we got, and the other was split between those 2 companies. We kind of knew that, but we didn't really know what it looked like. And it literally was billion-dollar relationships. We just really didn't have that visibility. And then when we got into there and were able to understand the financial contracts and the reach and the divisions we actually didn't even know about, the projects we didn't know about, we were able to increase our revenue by 10x. And literally, they were one of our best customers. So it's sort of like you don't know what you don't see.
So your own limitation of what you can view and what you can envision is a hindrance, right?
Absolutely. Another company I entered into, and this has been pretty consistent with also my board advising, they're selling to usually a VP level or director level. And when they can get this whole platform type of sale and contract, again, it's 10x. So when I came into a company that just got acquired by Cisco, their average sale was $100,000. And that's how they were reporting their revenue to the street. When we were able to get it to be a platform sale, we then elevated it to be $1 million. And then that was what was reported to the street. But think about that. That's 10 times what they were selling before. And so $100,000 was considered the biggest sale you could get. So it does take time to get there, but sometimes it is the limitations of our own minds.
I love that. We never think of ourselves as the biggest limitator, right? Well, that's fantastic. So I'm intrigued. Let's go on to number two here.
So number two is your ecosystem. A lot of people like to just stay in their lane, do what their assignment is and be focused. And when you're in larger companies, you have what's called an ecosystem. And that could look like sales specialists. So say you are selling a product that is sold to financial services, and there might be 10 different types of specialists that sell one to lending, one to loans, one's for their infrastructure, one's for their consumer banking, one's for their kiosk. The list could go on and on and on. For a lot of people, that is a lot of noise, and they're just asking me a lot of questions. They're messing up my plan. If you can then figure out how to embrace, I'll just say chaos, because it is a lot of people, you over time will serve your customer better and you'll develop deeper relationships. But it is challenging because sort of like you're on the shoulders of a lot of other people. So this is where it's a team sport, but it's a team sport not just with your internal people, but with your customer's ecosystem, and your customer's customer. And when you can start figuring all that out, that's where scale comes in play.
That's taking the opportunity and expanding it when you talk about your customer and your customer's customer, right? Now you're seeing opportunity that you just didn't see before. It was a blind spot. It's really what they want, right? What they want is to expand their relationship with their clients. So if you're a part of that and you understand what their clients need and how you can be an enabler inside of that ecosystem, you're just opening up potential. You're opening up contracts that you've never been into before. I love that. I'm going to call that moving beyond the blind spot.
Yeah, and Steve, you would ask with your listeners, how does that play out into their businesses? Where it gets challenged is by short-term thinking from leadership. If they're like, Steve, why are you spending all this time with all the how excited you were? Why are you spending time on that? You should be doing X. And you're like, hello, I'm thinking about 6 months from now, a year from now. They're like, I don't care. I just care about what you do this week. So that's where you need to manage your boss, or the whole organization needs to have an overall strategy.
I love it. Okay, I'm ready. Number
All
three.
right, this is one of my favorite one, shared values. So we talk about the power of purpose-built organizations. And when you can align with the purpose of your organization and your customer's organization, there's profits to be made, but it also is going to impact society. So that is what I'm so passionate about. I definitely was a giving person and a community-oriented person, but I didn't really understand this at scale until I got to IBM. And it might have been IBM, but it also might have been also the time, because at the time, this whole civic engagement, corporate citizenship, it was actually a new idea. And now it is actually part of many companies' actual board reporting. ESG is part of board
Right.
reporting. And what this looks like is when you really understand your customers' values and you can use your resources within your company to develop these deeper relationships and to multiply, that's what looks great. So I'll give you a quick example. One of my customers, they were in the home improvement business and they hired a lot of veterans. Their purpose was to put veterans back to work and also to help them get housed. when they came back. So they would have these, we all know the nonprofit Habitat for Humanity. It was kind of like that. And they actually partnered with them, by the way. They would build houses. And that's cool. But guess what? You can sign up for that in your local community. I can sign up for that in my local community. And yes, we can sign up as a team. But what if we could supply the shingles, the flooring, the carpeting, the lighting systems for this building? That would make it a different scenario, right? So to really think through that, and then what if we could provide education to all those homeowners that just moved in the last 25 houses? What if we could provide automobiles to them? And so the list goes on. So depending on the resources you have in your company and the grants that you could get together, this is where scale comes in. And that's what I'm just so excited about.
And that gives you visibility at the C-suite and the board level. It's a whole other avenue, a whole nother path to add relevancy to the relationship and expand the relationship because you're serving them based on their needs, right? What their goals are, and you're helping them find another way. It's not about the tech, the product, the service, right? It's a whole different level of relationship. Ah, I love that.
And for a smaller company I worked for, we were invited to participate. Again, it was our customers' interest that their nonprofit was Special Olympics. And Special Olympics had a golf tournament. Everyone has golf tournaments. And our CEO said, I don't want to be a logo. I'm not paying any money to be on a logo. And I kind of took that to heart. So I said, okay, we're not going to be the tea sponsor. We're not going to be the hat sponsor. We're not going to be the bag sponsor. So I created my own sponsorship and now they like it. So I created athlete sponsor. Our sponsorship was we support an athlete. And we just had little badges. They were like little pictures of the different athletes. They were going to compete, but they needed money because it cost money for training and transportation and food and housing, just like any organization. That's what we created, and people loved it. It was great. And of course, our company supported it, and it was just a great way to align. So sometimes, even with these organizations, you can make your own that aligns with your values of your company so you can still be part of the whole fanfare and fun.
You really hit home on that one. I have a daughter that's in Special Olympics. She would absolutely love that. So do these get better as you go on? Did you save the best for the last? Because they keep getting better.
Well, the last one is career. So I recently completed some executive education for AI at Harvard, and it was very expensive. And I even tried to negotiate it for the startup, but it's not something that they offer. At the larger companies, I didn't realize it till I asked and was turned down. And it wasn't turned down because they weren't interested. It was turned down because they just don't have that in their budgets. When I worked for these larger companies, there was tuition reimbursement. And a lot of times people are thinking, oh, well, I'm not going back to school or it's not for my job. If you fill out the forms, they will pay for it, but you got to do it. So there's executive education. At IBM, we had Harvard, we had Northeastern University, Amazon. It's on TV commercials where they're offering this type of education. A lot of people just think, oh, I'm too old, so I'm not going to do it. That's not true. And also, a lot of conferences and professional associations that have certifications that can also fall under that. So, a lot of times people just don't think about that. So, every company I've worked for, and I'm close to 60, they had that benefit all over it. The other one is visibility to professional organizations. I have been involved with women in technology for 26 years now. And so it's been through every company I work for, really. Sometimes they'll pay for your dues there, they'll offer sponsorships, you get to go to conferences, but you got to raise your hand. And even if it's not part of your day job, so say you're an engineer and you're really passionate about abilities and doing user abilities for people that are blind. Like that's just your passion, but it has nothing to do with your day job of an engineer building computer hardware. But this is what you're passionate about. They actually might have a whole project that you could get involved in your company, but you got to look for it. So when I worked for this one company and I actually ran social impact, that was really why I was so excited about it because we had programs that were people's passion projects. It wasn't their day jobs, but it made them better employees. That's what I'm so fired up about. And for smaller companies, it's back to what you're saying. You just got to ask because there might be a board member or a C-suite member that might have a membership to something or be involved with a charity or nonprofit at a bigger scale. And you can raise your hand and say, I'd love to volunteer. We think about it as sort of like strategic volunteering. And so you might get that leadership opportunity in that scenario that you might not already have in your day job. So your career can really grow with these resources.
And at the same time, if you're allowing and you're allowed to pursue your passions or adopt the passions of the organization, then you're a happier employee. You're happy to play with a better teammate. You have more longevity there. There's all kinds of studies about employee satisfaction and performance, right? So I love that. Now, you said that was the last one, but there's only the fourth. I think you had another one.
Yes, the last one, business. It's called balance of trade. And what this means is it's not like I do something for you, you'll do something for me. That's absolutely illegal. It's more about that we know each other's businesses, and especially back to the $1 billion. So if you have $1 billion quota, that means you're working for a company that could be 50 billion, 100 billion. You're working for a company that has hundreds of thousands of employees. And to be able to provide someone hundreds of thousands of employees a goods or service, it also requires a different level of excellence and process. Most likely, they're going to be in multiple geographies, time zones, languages. So there's going to be a different level of service that you're going to require that you're providing as a company, but also you're going to expect in turn. So what happens is these companies say, now I know so much about your business because we just did this XYZ project and I like your values and I like your employees. How can we do business together? So you see the head of the airlines with a technology company, or you see a food service with a hotel, or you see them together doing these collaborations, but they're also each other's customers. And then they can take that another level and say, but you now have this loyalty program data, and how could you really enhance that experience because of your shared ideas and shared experiences? So that's something else that I've seen it done at big scale, but you can do it at little scale in your communities. For example, real estate, you have your loan officer and your lender, and maybe your home improvement person and your staging person, and they're all kind of together in this community and they exchange business and ideas. And that really sets people up for success. And then also now you have some friends in business, right? So if there is a challenge, and we have challenges, we've had economic challenges, we've had natural disasters. Now I'm in the area of cybersecurity with a lot of my clients. You need to have those relationships ahead of time, not after the fact. So all of these early relationships builds great business, great customer experience, but it also builds trust in times of crisis.
Well, you're building your network of people that know and trust you. And we all know that the network, at some point, if you put into it honestly and are helping people and are creating those relationships, it will come back around and it will help you many times over. Every single of the top five that you mentioned here today had an aspect that expanded the network of the relationships that you have that can be a big part of your success. So, out of everything that we've talked about in your career and everything that you've done, what would be something that you're the most proud of?
I'm the most proud of an opportunity that was during COVID. When we were in lockdown, I worked for a large tech company that had very high performing sales team, and they traveled literally all the time. That they were always with customers and they really enjoyed it. And it was a great, great culture. And I predicted that everyone would, this sounds terrible, but really that they would have a mental breakdown. I really was predicting this mental anguish from not being face to face touching people and shaking their hand and sharing a meal. I filled out a form and came across this company that did performance mindset training for the San Francisco 49ers. And my company was based in San Francisco. So I was like, oh, if they could do it for the football team and I can get them here. So I call them up and I'll give him a shout out. His name's Russ Roush from Performance Mindset, Vision Pursue. And he's like, oh, yeah, I was supposed to come to the Atlanta Falcons, but their training camp shut down. So, yes, I'd love to work with you and your company. I ended up working with them. And why I was so proud, it wasn't just in North America. Well, first of all, my company trusted me, and it was not my job. I was not in learning and development. I was in a growth coaching area for the CRO and the CMO. So I said, we really need to think of our employees in a different way. Let's try this. And I got two executives to commit to it because they wanted a new language of how to talk, because back to the stress of a quota. So all this stuff happened in COVID, and we told everyone to stay home and relax and do all these things, but sales quotas didn't go away. And by the way, they went up. And so we needed a way to really help the team. I was most proud because it did achieve that. But also, what was so interesting is in the past, we would have programs globally, but the people that were in Japan and the UK, they would have recordings or they would have some other person, and they just didn't really get the full experience. So for this program, I said, you know what? We're going to try it. And the general manager for Japan, the general manager for the UK, they said we're in, and I don't care how many hours we stayed up later, and we gave them the same experience. And even though English was not their first language, it did not matter. It was great, and everyone literally said, and I'm getting chills, you've saved my life. And these people have coaches, they have coaches for their kids, they have personal coaches, but it was the time and place, and it was also because we did it together, and that's what made a difference.
Wow. So you found a whole new way to unite the team.
Yes.
So many lessons learned here that sometimes it's hard for the human brain to stack them all together and remember them. There was one thing that you wanted everybody to take away from today, the most important thing for them to take away. What do you think that would be?
It would be something is not being done to you. It's you need to be open. So the whole idea of being uncomfortable, be comfortable being uncomfortable, we say it all the time. I'm sure all your podcast guests have some type of mantra that they say like that. And when you are in a $1 billion company, you're always thinking this is being taken away from me, or this is being done to me, or I don't like the way this is happening. There's always that kind of swirling that's going on. And when you can take yourself out of that, focus on the customer, focus on this is a moment in time, control what you can control and move on. And then again, lean on your relationships. You will go far and you will be able to sleep at night and your customers will love you.
Well, that's good advice, right? Because we can all play the blame game really well. We can all point fingers over, right? There's never been a salesperson alive that lost a deal that didn't, say, I tried and this happened and this happened. But the bottom line is that's taking away the excuses, right? And you've laid out so many different ways that we can think about, that we can approach about from a mindset, from a team's perspective, how we actually, bring ESG and our passions into what we're doing and help us be more successful. You've expanded quite a bit the way that we can think about success and how we create success. So I want to thank you that, but I know that there's going to be people that have questions. And so would it be appropriate if we gave maybe a link to your LinkedIn profile so that they could reach out to you?
Absolutely. So my LinkedIn profile or my website is marvabailer.com. Pretty easy to remember. And then I'm also a book author. That was my COVID project. So that was a challenge. They said, if you can teach, you're great at doing these things, but you have to be able to teach other people. So my project during COVID was to write a book, and it actually got the career book of the year last year. So it was a lot of fun and very challenging. So yes, please reach out to me. Love to talk to you. And I do a lot of public speaking as well, and would love to speak to your group or speak to you one-on-one.
And what's the name of your book?
Be unexpected.
Why should we have not expected that? Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of these billion-dollar insights. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. And to everyone out there listening, thanks for investing the time. If you can invest in yourself and your community, we're all going to be better together.